Renewable energy has been a hot topic the last few years, especially with farmers and their land. I'm Ben Jarbo with the Midwest Farm Report, and I had a chat with Graham Christensen, a family farmer out of Nebraska, who is also the president of a company that develops solar energy systems. He gives a different perspective on renewable energy to put minds at ease, while also giving insight on things to watch out for when signing contracts with large renewable energy companies.
Over the last 15 years, have been an advocate for renewable energy to be part of the energy portfolio, but as long as it's done right. And so the question is should we have farmers and landowners in our areas being part of solutions to create more domestic energy, or do we not want them to? And would we prefer to have bigger, other kinds of companies coming in, many of them being, foreign, to be able to fuel our future through energy and power? And if the answer to that question is that yes, we think that the people that live here and have the land should be a part of allowing us to increase our domestic energy supply around this area and around this region. Well, what I'm really here to talk about is how we do that in a safe way, because we know historically big companies, often have leasing programs that sometimes take advantage of the farmer. And I've seen that being a farmer myself. And so there's a need here, but we have work to do this the right way. And tonight's discussion, we're going to talk about how we can actually do this the right way in ways that protect our rural communities and allow farmers to have a role in that domestic energy plan. And we'll break that down in depth tonight as this meeting gets going.
Well, and what are those biggest issues that you have noticed from those big companies, renewable energy companies, that say they're doing the right by the farmer, but are kind of sketchy on the farmer side?
I've been looking at renewable energy leases since approximately 2007, 2008, as companies have come through our state. And the classic one is they don't pay folks enough who are on the front lines and are taking that first line of risk. But I've also seen leases that will hold the land for 70 years. I mean, if you can't get a project in place in 6, 7, 10 years at max, there's no need to be holding a landowner's lease and some of their rights. More recently, I've seen companies come into our state trying to lease big solar projects. But if you look at the fine writing in the leases, you actually see that they're looking to try to secure land 500 foot below ground level. They're seeking mineral rights rather than maybe a solar project in the end game. And so we'd have to know who we're working with, and we need to have some standards.
And when we talk about renewable energy, what has been the most common or most beneficial that you have seen through your work?
I'm a big believer in distributed generation. I do a lot of small installations on farms, on residences, and businesses. But outside of that more family security or business security that you look for on those kind of systems, we need to have domestic energy security. So there is a role for bigger renewable energy projects to power the future growth in the middle part of the country. And so once again, if we're going to have more local people and farmers be part of a domestic energy program that builds on our national security around good local energy, we just have to make sure that we get some of the basic things right up front. And, tonight's meeting and these conversations with landowners, we're going to be comparing some notes, from Nebraska to here in Wisconsin, talking about some of our real experiences back there, some of the real experiences that are happening here in Wisconsin, and try to sort through how we can be able to create win-win situations out of the development of energy. And so we're going to break things down, and I think it'll be a pretty good discussion.
Well, with farmers, a lot of times their biggest worry, I mean, especially with windmills, it's how's it going to affect the quality of the ground. For, say, solar panels, it takes up so much land. How are you able to kind of merge the two ways of thinking? Like, you don't want to lose a ton of land, but you also want to be able to help produce your own energy.
So a wind turbine at the base takes up a third of an acre, so farming pretty much continues on as normal. Of course, in that third of an acre, you should recoup way more dollars than you ever could be able to make by just, the regular kind of farming structures that we have. There's some concrete that goes under the ground, but it doesn't go as deep. It's a little bit wider. It's not as big of an issue as some have made it out to be. So wind turbines, as long as not developed like in a flyway or something. I'm from Nebraska, and the sandhill cranes come through. That would not be an ideal area to develop a wind turbine. But there are areas that are in row crop land that have high elevation, that are outside of some of those more sensitive areas, that are extremely feasible opportunities for farmers to produce energy that has low emissions. Regarding solar energy, it's a little different story. It takes up, like you said, a whole bunch more land. So back home in our county, and we'll talk about this tonight, we're asking the companies to make sure they restore the prairie, put vegetation in the solar system. So then, if we're taking out the farmland and we're using that land to produce this clean energy that meets the demand of locals, we're also going to have a grass-based prairie system in place, and that is going to allow this to stop erosion, to restore habitat for more wildlife habitat specifically, and get a lot of the ecological benefits that you wouldn't get under like white crushed rock. So these are things that, once again, we can go about doing this the wrong way, which creates, more animosity in the conversation, or we can have standards. And when we implement standards, we find out, especially if landowners work collectively together amongst one another, we find out that the companies, if they're a good, credible company, they'll usually come around and have good faith negotiations with us and incorporate some of our principles, including making sure that land use is restorative under solar energy systems, for instance.
A big topic with that land, again, is just farmers are already trying to produce more with less, and a lot of them are worried about still being able to do that if they're taking out a couple hundred acres for solar panels. What can you say to maybe put them at ease, or what's being worked on to kind of combat that?
First of all, I would say take a look at the size of and the amount of data centers that are going in. That's a lot bigger footprint issue as we continue to punch things into our cell phones and our computers nonstop. The younger generations are even more hook, line, and sinker, than the older generations. And so data centers are going to continue to cover the earth. Solar energy, at least when you put that in and take out some land, is going to be under restorative. And I think that in this area in Wisconsin and back home, there's also areas that are more strategic to develop. Maybe they're not prime cropland. Maybe those should be the first places that you would actually look to develop energy systems. And of course, I'm really interested in agrovoltaics. There's more convergence of livestock grazing and solar coming our way in the future. And as we've seen the costs of the infrastructure of solar continually go down, is gonna be able to allow us to be able to do this in a way that actually allows more agricultural production with the collection of energy to go hand in hand. In my belief, agriculture and energy are married. As a farmer, I'm harvesting the sun and the wind. This is a valuable commodity that is needed by utilities, growing businesses, by people as our communities continue to grow and will need to thrive. And so we're going to need to find a way to balance this all together. But I don't believe the answer is just to say no. I feel that we need to merge it, and while no two communities are the same, we can have some same principles that we relate around, and it may look a little different in Wisconsin than it does in Iowa or Nebraska, but at the end of the day, we can all do this in a way that respects our little home area and our community.
Christensen says that the use of solar panels in their community has allowed them to boost their economy, which in turn helped them to better fund their schools. For the Midwest Farm Report, I'm Ben Jarbo.